Serious. What's the most disturbing thing you've overheard that you were never meant to hear? 1. My father-in-law after a routine hip replacement. His O2 levels plummeted and he suffered heart failure. While he was brain dead in the ICU, a physician came to do his rounds with a group of residents, and they asked us to leave the room. So we sat in the waiting area, outside the elevators. The group came out, and while they were waiting for the elevator to arrive, the doctor said to his students, "And that is why you never give Haldol to a heart patient. And that is why my mill got a $150,000 settlement from the hospital. And that is why they have those little signs in hospital elevators reminding you not to discuss patients." 2. Earlier in my career, I went from school to work with kids with visual impairments. Some braille, some tech. I was in a room for kids with intellectual disabilities and vision impairments, waiting for my student to come out of the bathroom. 2 parapros in the room were talking about how they had to watch another student's pants in case they saw blood. One said, "The dad got out of jail, so we have to report if we see blood on her butt." I know they were not talking to me, but I heard. I must have done something with my face because the classroom teacher came over and asked what I'd heard. She told me that the girl's dad his daughters but did it to prevent pregnancy. While he was in jail, their mom married him so he would be living with them. And the mom was pregnant. I wish I had stood somewhere else that day while I waited for my student. 3. I was at a dance club in Mexico once. I was headed to the bathroom, but there were a ton of people crowding the entrance, and they were quietly talking in a single conversation with each other. I do not speak Spanish. I figured it was just a line, so I queued up behind the group. Another local guy lined up behind me and after a few minutes tapped me on the shoulder. He and I had the following conversation. Him: "Do you speak Spanish?" "Lo siento." "No, English." "These guys are planning on someone and are worried that you're listening to them. You should leave right now." So that was pretty scary. 4. I was traveling back home from a work trip last year, about an hour from boarding the plane. A woman on the seats behind me answered her phone and let out the saddest wail I've ever heard because the person on the other end told her that her son had died. It was extremely sad and weird to think that there were so many witnesses to probably one of the worst moments in her life. 5. My mostly absentee father was by a train when I was 11 the Saturday before Father's Day. The next day I overheard my grandmother, his mother, telling someone on the phone that deputies had walked on either side of the track collecting what was left in 2 body bags. 6. My dad, probably drunk, telling me over the phone how he was gonna kill my mom's new boyfriend. He thought I was her. I was 10. 7. My great-grandmother, delirious on her deathbed, was talking to herself. She was saying she was sorry for not protecting you. She went on to talk about her only baby daughter used to bang her crib against the wall. And one day my drunk of a great-grandfather got sick of it and slammed her against the wall. She went to check on her and she was limp. She 18 hours later, and my great-grandfather buried her in the backyard. Edit to add, my great-grandfather was a horrible man. He stayed a drunk and beat his remaining children. 2 of the boys, including my grandfather, joined the army to escape the house. I believe he lied about his age to join shortly after his brother joined, and they both ended up in Vietnam. My grandfather was a POW and received a Purple Heart. They were both lovely men despite their upbringing and their trauma from war. 8. I was in the ER due to kidney stones. Overheard a man next door wailing because his father suffered from a heart attack during a baseball game they were at. We were at the ball game, just having a good time. For a brief moment I didn't feel pain in my kidney. 9. Probably less disturbing, more so chilling, saddening. I overheard the conversation between my father when my father decided he was going to stop cancer treatment and was ready to. I had stopped at their house on my way back from work and a really nasty storm rolled in, so I just spent the night. My mother is pretty hearing impaired, so she speaks loudly. From the guest bedroom I overheard her say there is still something we can do. So I went and listened outside their room. It was basically my father telling her that he is tired of the treatments and just wants to go. His cognitive function had already declined so much he didn't feel like himself anymore. We all knew that this was going to happen eventually. He had received a 3-month prognosis and ended up lasting over 2 years. You don't really beat stage 4 brain cancer. So I wasn't disturbed or shocked or anything, just very sad. 10. Probably my mom telling my dad I knew from the very beginning that me wouldn't amount to anything. She probably said it out of anger and didn't mean it or whatever, but after all these years I can feel my heart sinking whenever I'm reminded of it. 11. One of my friends was in action. A few days later I overheard that when his remains were collected, they were basically scooping into a stuffed sack the bag you stuff a sleeping bag into, and hosed off the rest. The guy who related it was traumatized over the fact he had to reach into that sack to try to find his dog tags. The two talking didn't know we'd known each other for years. 12. A girl at my high school telling her friend about the time she caught her ex cheating on her with his 13-year-old sister. She called the cops on him. 13. My mom would usually have her friend over most days and they would sit in the kitchen and talk for hours. Mom's friend was not so recently divorced and was always talking about guys she was seeing on the regular. The dining room table where they'd sit and talk was right under my bedroom and I'd always drown out their conversations with my stereo or TV. One day I was doing homework and could hear them talking. Mom's friend had a daughter who was around 16 to 17 and the friend was complaining that her daughter had massive breasts and she would get loads of attention and she hated that all the guys would look at her daughter and not her. The friend then admitted she had been crushing up all kinds of diet pills into her daughter's food to stop her boobs from growing and maybe shrink them. 14. My mom was talking to a cousin late one night. She didn't know I was close enough to hear. I learned that night just how many men in my family were and 15. My schizophrenic mother crying about the people in the walls murdering her ex-boyfriend by tearing him apart at 4 a.m. She hadn't talked to the dude since before I was born. I was already into horror gore stuff as a teen, so it didn't traumatize me quite as much. 16. Probably waking up in the middle of the night when I was 7 hearing my mom's ex-BF beating her, then hearing him tell her to tell them that she just fell down the stairs, then the ambulance coming to get her, walking downstairs and seeing her blood all over the place. She had to get staples in her head. 17. A buddy called me to cancel plans because he was sick. He put the phone down but didn't hang up. I heard him say, "Okay, out of that. What are we going to do?" Heard another voice name a bar, so I went too. So basically I made the night purposefully awkward. Now it's 20 years later and we are still buds. Look back on it and laugh. 18. Heard upper management talking about who they banged in the office, strippers, and who was on their list to conquer. They forgot I worked on the other side of the wall until I walked around to ask them something. I pretended like I didn't hear anything, but their faces turned white while talking to me. I was gonna keep it to myself, but I guess they got scared, and I got let go not too long after that. 19. When I was 12, my parents got into a huge argument in front of me. My dad immediately then told me, "I'm going to do something that will make your mom laugh." I begged my dad to not do it. I knew he was going to try to kill himself. Don't know why I had the feeling. But he didn't listen, and he proceeded to walk into our garage and hang himself.